So this is the Chapter 8 practice test, Part 2 for Chapter 8 in geometry. So the directions for numbers 1 and 2 say find the approximate value of each trigonometric ratio to the nearest 10 thousandths. That means 4 decimal places after, or 4 numbers after the decimal point, which means you look at the 5th number to decide if it stays or rounds up. So for number 1, I got 0.6561, and for number 2, I got 0.0872. If you don't get those same answers, check that your calculator is in the correct mode, and that you're punching it in correctly, and that you're using regular trig, not inverse. All right, numbers 3 through 6, the directions say find the exact value of each trigonometric ratio, and they give you what angle they want you to start from. So from angle C, they want the sine, which is the opposite, over the hypotenuse. So the opposite is 10, the hypotenuse is 26, so you write 10 over 26, and then you reduce it. For number 4, the cosine of x, so circle angle x. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 35 over 37. Check to see if you can reduce it. Number 5 is the tangent of A, so circle angle A. You should have opposite over adjacent, so 24 over 20 reduces. Number 6 is the cosine of A, so from A you want the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and then go ahead and reduce it. Down at the bottom, find the missing side, round to the nearest 10th. So from the angle 15 degrees right here, they want you to solve this side, which is opposite, and you know the hypotenuse, so you should use the sine. So you say the sine of 15 is equal to x over 11. Make it into a proportion, do the cross product, and solve. They want your answers to the nearest 10th, so you should end up with 2.8. Number 8, from the angle, you know the opposite, and you want the hypotenuse, so you're going to use sine. Sine of 15 degrees equals the opposite, which is 12, the hypotenuse, which is x. Make a proportion out of it, do the cross product, and solve. Number 9, from the angle, you want to find out the opposite, and you know the adjacent, so you should use tangent. So the tangent of 65 degrees is equal to the opposite, which is x, over the adjacent, which is 10. Make it into a proportion, do the cross product, and solve. You should get 21.4. For number 10, the angle is 50 degrees. You know the opposite, you want the adjacent, so you should use tangent of the 13 over the x, make a proportion out of it, do the cross product, and solve. Up at the top of the next page, number 11. Same directions from the prior page. So you're going to look at the angle, and you've got the adjacent and the hypotenuse, so you should use cosine. Write down your ratio, make a proportion out of it, do the cross product, and solve. 12. You've got the angle, you know the adjacent, you want the hypotenuse, so use cosine. Write down the ratio, make a proportion out of it, do the cross product, and divide both sides by the cosine of 28. You should get roughly 18.1. So for numbers 13 and 14, this is all calculator work. It says find each angle measure, which means you're going to use inverse trig instead of a regular trig. And you're going to round to the nearest degree, which means the nearest whole number. So make sure your calculator displays that -1. Okay? Type it in, and you should get 73 degrees for 13, 53 degrees for 14. Numbers 15 and 16, you're going to find the measure of the angle to the nearest degree. Make sure you use inverse trig. So the angle you want to find right here, I called it x. I knew the opposite and the hypotenuse, so I used sine. And I know I need to use inverse, so I did the inverse of the ratio and got 73 degrees. For 16, here's the angle. I know opposite and adjacent, which is tangent. So I did inverse tangent of the ratio, punched it in the calculator, got 35 degrees. Number 17 says a support wire is attached to the top of a 350-foot tower to stop it from falling over in strong wind. The angle of elevation from the point where the wire is attached to the ground to the top of the tower is 25 degrees. Find the length of the wire to the nearest 10th. So I drew a right triangle to help me. Here's the ground, here's the tower. Tower is 350 feet, here's your wire, and that angle of elevation is 25 degrees. So I know opposite and hypotenuse, so I used sine, created my proportion out of it by writing the ratio on the other side, did the cross product, divided both sides by the sine of 25, and got 828 feet, or sorry, 0.2 feet. Number 18 says a lighthouse keeper standing at the top of a 175-foot lighthouse spots a ship on the ocean. If the angle of depression to the ship is 16 degrees, find the horizontal distance from the lighthouse to the ship to the nearest tenth. So up at the top here, it's 175 feet. I also labeled it over here. It doesn't matter which side technically, but I drew the triangle this way, making my right angle here. So from here, I knew opposite and adjacent. So I used tangent of the angle measure 16, set it equal to my ratio, did the cross product, and solved, got 610 feet. Number 19 is your law of sines. And you want to find your answer to the nearest tenth. So I found this angle, looked at the opposite side, put that on the left side of my proportion, found this angle and its opposite side, so put it on the right side of my equation, did the cross product. To get the x by itself, I divide both sides by the sine of 36, rounded my answer to the nearest tenth and got 46.1. For number 20, I knew this side, or this angle and its opposite side, so I put it on the left, or on the right side of my equation, but I didn't know this angle, so I calculated it by starting with 180, subtracting the two angles that I know, so this one's 70, and that became the left side of my equation, the ratio of the sine of the angle measure over the side length. Set up the proportion, did the cross product, divided by sine of 50 on both sides, ended up with 11.1 or 11.0.